I want to be honest about something before I start, because I think context matters here. I think honesty matters, especially when, it makes you sound like you've lost your grip on things. I am not a paranoid person. I am not someone who sees patterns in everything, or thinks the internet is alive, or believes that websites can want things. I'm a 34-year-old data entry specialist living alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio. I eat the same frozen meals most nights. I go to bed too late. I wake up too early. I spend more time online than I should, and I know that, and I do it anyway. Because what else is there when the apartment is quiet, and the only sound is the refrigerator cycling on, and the router blinking its little green eye in the dark? I'm telling you this so you understand the kind of person I was before I found the thread. Ordinary. Tired. Not the kind of person things happen to. The thread found me on a Tuesday in November. Not last November, the one before that. I've been sitting on this for over a year now, and I still don't know if telling this story is the right thing to do, but I've reached a point where keeping it inside feels worse than whatever happens when I let it out. So here it is. All of it. Everything I can prove and everything I can't, and the long, ugly middle, where the difference between those two things stopped mattering. It started, like most of my bad decisions, on Reddit. I was browsing a subreddit dedicated to old, unsolved internet mysteries. Not the big famous ones, not Cicada 3301 or the Lake City Quiet Pills thing or any of that well-documented stuff. The smaller ones. Threads about defunct forums from the mid-2000s where users would go quiet one by one and nobody could figure out why. Arguments about whether a specific Geocities page was a real person's diary or an art project. Screenshots of cached conversations from message boards that don't exist anymore. The kind of thing that's interesting for about 45 minutes before you realize you're reading it at 2 in the morning and you have work at 7 and none of it matters. I liked it though. Not because I thought I was going to solve anything. I liked the archaeology of it. The way the internet has these layers, like sediment, and if you dig carefully, you can find the outline of something that used to be alive. The post that caught my attention was titled, "Has anyone ever actually found a working mirror of the Van den Graaff thread?" And it had 6 upvotes and 2 comments. One comment said, "Lol, good luck," and the other was a deleted account. The post itself was short. The user handle was Mar Air Imbrium. I remember that clearly because I looked at their profile later and it was empty. One post, no comments, account created the same day, wrote only a few sentences. They said they'd been trying to find an archived version of a thread from an old forum called the SIL, and that every mirror they'd tried was either dead or redirected to a domain parking page. They asked if anyone had a local copy or a screenshot. I had never heard of the SIL. I had never heard of the Van den Graaff thread, but something about the post snagged me. Maybe it was the phrasing, "Has anyone ever actually found?" which implied that lots of people had tried and failed. Maybe it was the deleted comment underneath, which I imagined contained something useful that someone had decided to remove. Maybe I was just bored and a little depressed and looking for a project at 1:30 in the morning. Whatever it was, I opened a new tab and searched. The first thing I found was almost nothing. The SIL, based on scattered references, had been a small independent forum active from roughly 2004 to 2011. It focused on what people at the time would have called anomalous media, not creepypasta exactly, not IRGs. More like a community of people who collected and discussed strange things they'd found in physical media. Printed books, unlabeled VHS tapes from thrift stores, audio recordings on old answering machines, radio signals picked up at odd hours, that sort of thing. The vibe, from the few references I could piece together, was somewhere between academic and obsessive. People took it seriously. It wasn't a joke forum. The Van den Graaff thread, as far as I could reconstruct from fragments quoted on other sites, had been one of the SIL's longest and most active discussions. It was named after a user, Van den Graaff. who had started the thread in either 2007 or 2008 by posting a scan of a handwritten note he claimed to have found inside a used book purchased at an estate sale in Northampton, Massachusetts. The note was written in English, but contained strings of numbers that some users believed were coordinates. Others thought were dates, and others argued were meaningless. What made the thread notable, apparently, was not the note itself, but what happened over the following 3 years. Users who tried to investigate the note, who visited the coordinates, who researched the estate sale, who contacted the bookshop, would post updates for a while and then go silent. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just a slow thinning of active participants. Their accounts wouldn't be deleted, they'd just stop posting. And when other users would send them private messages asking if they were okay, the messages would show as read, but never answered. By 2011, the thread had accumulated over 2,000 replies, and a significant number of the most active contributors had gone quiet. The SIL itself went offline later that year. The domain expired and was never renewed. Nobody knew why. There was some discussion on other forums at the time, but it faded quickly. The SIL wasn't big enough for its death to be an event. It was just another small forum that disappeared. This was the story, anyway. I should be clear that I assembled it from third-hand references, half-remembered summaries on other forums, and a few scattered posts on boards that were themselves barely active anymore. I couldn't verify most of it. I couldn't find a single direct quote from the original thread. I couldn't find the scan of the note. I couldn't find a complete user list or a post count or anything concrete. Just the shape of something, outlined by absence. I should have stopped there. I almost did. I closed my laptop around 3 in the morning and went to bed and told myself it was just another dead-end rabbit hole. But the next night I was back at it, and the night after that, and within a week I had spent somewhere around 20 hours searching for a working archive of the SIL. The Wayback Machine had captured the forum's front page a handful of times between 2006 and 2010, but the captures were shallow, just the main index, no threads, no user content. Most of the internal links resolved to nothing. A few led to the Wayback's own error page. One, dated September 2009, led to a page that loaded for about 15 seconds and then redirected me to a completely unrelated website selling industrial lubricants. I checked the URL carefully. It was right. The redirect made no sense. I assumed it was a domain reuse issue and moved on. I tried other archive services. Archive.today had nothing. The cached versions on Google were gone. I tried specialized forum archive tools, the kind that scrape and store message board content. None of them had indexed the SIL. I searched for downloaded copies, database dumps, anything a user might have saved locally and uploaded somewhere. Nothing. Then, on the 8th or 9th night, I wasn't keeping exact track at the time, though I wish I had, I found a link on an old Blogspot page. The blog was called The Depth Sounding, and it appeared to have been a single-person project from around 2012 to 2014, documenting lost and deleted web content. The author's name wasn't listed. Most of the posts were about dead websites and disappeared YouTube channels. Near the bottom of the page, in a post from March 2013, there was a paragraph about the SIL. It was brief. It said the forum had been notable for the Vanden Graaff thread, and that partial archives might still exist on something called Archivum, which the author described as a secondary mirror service that had cached some of the smaller independent forums from that era. I had never heard of Archivum. I searched for it and found very little. A few mentions on old tech forums. Someone in 2015 asking if it was still operational. No answer. The URL listed in most references was archivum.org, and when I typed it into my browser, it loaded a plain white page with a search bar and a single line of text that said, Archivum Web Preservation Project, Public Access Terminal in a serif font. No logo, no navigation, no about page, just the search bar. I typed the SIL and hit enter. It returned one result, a cached copy of the forum index dated November 2010. The page was plain, stripped of most formatting, no images, just text and links in a basic HTML layout. But the thread titles were there, dozens of them. And about 2/3 of the way down the list, there it was. VG note, coordinates, dates, interpretation, ongoing, started by Vandengraaf, 2,241 replies, last active October 2010. I clicked it. The thread loaded slowly. Not the way a modern page loads slowly, with spinning icons and progressive rendering. It loaded the way old pages used to load on dial-up, line by line, top to bottom, as though the data were being transmitted through a very narrow pipe. The header appeared first, then the first post. Then the replies, one by one, each one pushing the page longer as it arrived. The first post was from Vandengraaf, dated March 14, 2008. It contained a scan of the handwritten note. The image actually loaded, which surprised me, and a short introduction. The note itself was written in blue ink on lined paper, and the handwriting was small and careful. There were 4 columns of numbers separated by dashes. Below the numbers, in a different hand, someone had written a single sentence. Check it again when the thread is full. I remember reading that sentence and feeling a small, cold pulse in my chest. Not fear exactly. More like the feeling you get when you realize a conversation you've been overhearing is about you. I scrolled down. The early replies were what you'd expect. People analyzing the numbers, suggesting coordinate formats, arguing about whether the second column could represent dates in European format. One user, Handel Diatom Kaloxt, posted a detailed breakdown suggesting the numbers corresponded to specific pages in specific editions of a book called The Surveyor's Margin, published in 1971. Another user, Saltlick Creek, disagreed and proposed they were timestamps from an old Unix system. A third user, whose handle was just the letter G followed by a string of numbers, G11187042, posted a single reply that said, "Already been there, don't, no elaboration. No follow-up." When other users asked what GA11187042 meant, the account never replied again. I kept scrolling. The thread covered months. The conversation would go quiet for a few weeks, then flare up when someone posted new information. In June 2008, a user named Pelagic Zones posted photographs of a location in western Massachusetts that they said matched the coordinates from the first interpretation. The photos showed a wooded area and what appeared to be the foundation of a small building, overgrown and partially collapsed. Pelagic Zones posted 5 images. 3 loaded on the cached page. 2 were broken links. In the loaded images, you could see the foundation clearly, and in one of them, propped against a mossy stone, there was something that looked like a metal box. Pelagic Zone wrote that they hadn't opened it. They wrote they'd go back the following weekend with proper tools and a friend. They never posted again. I read through the rest of the thread over the course of about 2 hours. The pattern was exactly as the second-hand accounts had described. Users would contribute actively, sometimes for weeks or months, and then stop. Their last posts were never dramatic. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't describe anything frightening. They just made a normal reply, a question, a suggestion, a minor correction, and then their account went dark. By 2010, the thread was mostly dead. The last few replies were from users asking where everyone had gone. The final post in the thread, dated October 23, 2010, was from a user named Carolyn Set, and it said, "If anyone is still reading this, please contact me off forum. I think I understand the note now, and I don't think it's a code. I think it's a list." That was the last entry. Below it, the page ended. No footer, no navigation, just white space. I sat there for a long time. The apartment was very quiet. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. The clock on my taskbar said it was 3:47 a.m. I took a screenshot of the thread's first page and saved it to my desktop. I bookmarked the Archivum URL. I copied the text of the first post and the last post into a text file. Then I went to bed. The next evening, after work, I opened the bookmark. The thread loaded again, same slow, top-to-bottom crawl. But something was different. It took me a few minutes to notice because I hadn't memorized the thread, but when I scrolled to the bottom, The last reply was no longer from Carrion Tersete. There was a new post below it. The username was test.knock.notdil, and the timestamp said November 3, 2010. The text of the post was short. Thread was archived on request. No further contributions. Moderator. It read like a standard mod notice, the kind that gets appended when a thread is locked. I hadn't noticed it the night before, but I assumed I'd just missed it. It was late when I'd been reading. I was tired. It was a minor detail. I kept reading from where I'd left off the previous night, going back through the middle section of the thread more carefully. I was looking for connections, who had posted the most, who had disappeared first. Whether anyone had mentioned the sentence written at the bottom of the note, check it again when the thread is full. I made notes in a spreadsheet, usernames, dates of first and last posts. Anything that seemed relevant. It was the kind of obsessive cataloging I'm good at. I do it for a living, more or less. Data entry, rows and columns, patterns in information. That's when I noticed the second anomaly. I had been comparing timestamps in my spreadsheet to the timestamps on the cached thread, and one of them didn't match. A post by Salt Click Creek that I had recorded the previous night as being dated August 12, 2008 was now dated August 12, 2009, a full year later. I checked my spreadsheet twice. I checked the screenshot I'd taken the night before. In the screenshot, the timestamp clearly said 2008. On the live page, it said 2009. I want to tell you that I felt a chill at that moment, but the truth is I felt annoyed. I assumed the archive was glitchy. Cached pages are not perfect records. Timestamps can be stored in local time or server time, and sometimes the conversion drifts. Dates can be parsed wrong when a page is reconstructed from partial data. It was weird, but it wasn't impossible. I corrected my spreadsheet, made a note of the discrepancy, and moved on. Over the next few days, I found 3 more timestamp changes, small ones. A post moving from March to April, another losing its exact time, showing only a date where before it had shown hours and minutes. A third gaining a timestamp where it hadn't had one. Each change was minor on its own, but together they made me uneasy in a way I couldn't articulate. The thread was not static. It was a cached page on an obscure archive service, and it was changing. I tried to contact Archivum. There was no contact page, no email address, no about section, no footer, no terms of service, just the search bar and the one line of text. I searched for other cached sites on the service and found a handful. A recipe blog from 2006, a local newspaper's archived letters page, a personal website about model trains. They all loaded in the same stripped-down format. None of them seemed to change between visits, only the SIL. On the 6th night, I found the Archivum URL wouldn't load at all. I got a timeout error. I tried again an hour later and it loaded, but the thread was different, not dramatically different. The posts were the same. The order was the same. But the moderator notice at the bottom was gone, and in its place there were 2 new replies. The first was from Diatom Kopkakak, whose last post in the original thread had been in September 2008. The new post was dated November 15, 2010, more than 2 years after the account had gone silent. It said, "I want to correct something I posted earlier about the surveyor's manual. The coordinates are not geographic, they are sequential. They describe an order. I'm sorry I didn't see it before." The second new post was from an account I hadn't seen in the thread before. The username was blank, not deleted.
Blank.
The field where the username should have been was simply empty. The timestamp was November 15, 2010, same as Diatom Cox's correction. The post said, "The thread is not full yet." I stared at that for a long time. I took a screenshot. I saved the page as a complete HTML file. I copied the text into my notes. I checked the screenshot I'd taken on the first night and confirmed that these posts had not been there. Then I went to the Reddit post, where I'd first heard about the thread. Mayor Imbrium's question about the working mirror, and started typing a reply describing what I'd found. I got about 3 sentences in and stopped. I deleted the draft. I don't entirely know why. I think part of me didn't want to share the Archivum link, not out of possessiveness, more out of something that felt uncomfortably like protectiveness. Like I'd found something fragile and exposure would ruin it. I told myself that wasn't rational. I told myself I was being dramatic. I went to bed. The next night, when I opened the thread, there were 4 more new posts, all from accounts that had gone silent years earlier, all dated within days of each other in November 2010. Pelagicson, the one who had found the foundation in the woods and never posted again, had written, "I did go back. I opened the box. What was inside was a list of names. I recognized 2 of them. One was mine." Below that, Saltclick Creek wrote, "The timestamps aren't wrong. They're accurate. They're just not measuring what you think they're measuring." Below that, GA11877042, the user who had posted, already been there. "Don't," wrote a longer message. It said, "By now you're probably the only one reading this. That's how it works. The thread doesn't close because it isn't done. It waits. Sometimes for years, it needs someone to keep it active. Someone who searches. Someone who archives. Someone who takes notes and compares timestamps and builds spreadsheets and can't stop checking because the not knowing is worse than anything the knowing could be. If that's you, then you should understand that I am not writing this in 2010. I don't know when I'm writing this. I don't know if I'm writing this. But I know you're reading it, and I'm sorry." The 4th post was from the blank username again. It said, "New participant indexed calibrating." I did not take a screenshot. My hands were shaking, and I closed the laptop, and I stood up and walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water and drank it standing at the counter in the dark. The refrigerator hummed. The router blinked green. I could feel my pulse in my throat. I want to describe this accurately because it matters. I was not afraid in the way you'd be afraid of an intruder or a car accident. I was afraid the way you're afraid when you realize you've been doing something wrong for a long time without knowing it. Like the fear is not about what's going to happen, but about what's already happened while you weren't paying attention. I didn't open the laptop again that night. I went to bed at midnight, which was early for me. I slept badly. I dreamed about scrolling through a page that never ended, and every post was blank except for the timestamps, which were counting forward by 1 second each. And I knew that when they reached the present moment, something would happen. But I woke up before they got there. I stayed away from the thread for 3 days. I worked. I grocery shopped. I watched television. I did not search for anything related to the Sill or Vanden Graaf or Archivum. I told myself it was an elaborate hoax, that someone had built a fake archive service that dynamically generated content based on visitor behavior. It was technically possible. Not easy, but possible. Someone with enough skill and enough time and a sufficiently odd sense of humor could do it. The personalized details, the reference to spreadsheets and timestamps, were generic enough that they could apply to anyone who spent time investigating an old forum thread. It was cold reading. It was a trick. On the 4th day, I searched Google for Archivum Web Preservation Project to see if anyone else had written about the service. I found nothing, not a single result. The Blogspot page where I'd first learned about it was gone. Not the post, the entire blog. The depth sounding returned no results. The URL returned a blogger error page. I checked the Wayback Machine for the blog and found one capture from 2013, but when I loaded it, the text was there, except the paragraph about Archivum and the Sill. It was just missing. The post jumped from a section about a deleted YouTube channel to a section about a defunct webcomic, as though the paragraph in between had never existed. I want to be clear about what I did next, because it's the point where I could have stopped and didn't. I had every reason to walk away. The thread was either a hoax designed to scare people, or it was something I didn't understand, and, in either case, continuing to engage with it was not going to improve my life. I knew that. I said it out loud to myself in my empty apartment. This is not going to improve your life. Then I opened the Archivum page and loaded the thread. It was longer, significantly longer. Where before there had been maybe a dozen new posts appended to the end of the original thread, now there were scores of them. The page took almost 2 full minutes to load, text appearing line by line from top to bottom. The new posts were not all from familiar usernames. Some were from accounts I didn't recognize, with handles that didn't match any I'd cataloged from the original thread. They were discussing things I didn't understand, references to the second list, to the calibration period, to echo participants and source participants. The tone was clinical and flat, like minutes from a meeting that had no clear purpose. I scrolled to the bottom. The last post was from an account with my username, not my Reddit username. My username on a small music forum I'd been active on in 2014 and hadn't thought about in years. The handle was specific. It included a number and an underscore pattern that I'd used only on that one site. The timestamp on the post was November 22, 2010. The text said, "Just found this thread. Reading from the beginning. Will post notes when I have something." I felt the room tilt, not physically, perceptually, like the distance between me and the screen had changed without either of us moving. I read the post again. It was my handle. It was my exact phrasing. I start every research project the same way, notes first and conclusions later. It was dated 6 years before I'd started using the internet for anything more than email and basic browsing. It was dated 14 years before I found the thread. I checked my old music forum account. I hadn't logged in since 2016. The forum itself was still online but barely active. I found my profile, my username, my post history. Everything was normal. There was no connection to the SIL, no cross-posting, no link. And yet there was my handle sitting in a thread on a dead forum dated 2010, saying exactly the kind of thing I would say. I went back to the Archivum thread and searched the page for my handle. It appeared 3 times. The first was the post I'd already read. The second was a reply from the blank username, posted 2 minutes after mine according to the timestamp, that said, "Contivit recognized. Pattern consistent. File opened." The third was a post dated December 1, 2010, again from my handle that said, "The note isn't a code. Caroline Set was right. It's a list. I've started comparing the names to the usernames. Most of them match. Mine is near the bottom. I didn't write that. I need you to understand that. I didn't write any of it. I had never posted on the SIL. I had never been to Archivum before that month. I had never heard of any of this before the Reddit post. And yet there I was, in the thread, doing exactly what I was doing, comparing names, building lists, reaching the same conclusion that it was a list. My phone buzzed. A notification from my email. I picked it up. It was a message from an address I didn't recognize, a string of numbers at a domain I'd never seen. The subject line was VG note, coordinates, dates, interpretation, ongoing, as though I'd sent the original email and this was a reply. I hadn't sent any email. The body of the message contained a single line, "You don't have to open it again, but you will." I deleted the email. I closed the laptop. I turned off my phone. I sat in the dark for a while, and then I turned on every light in the apartment and sat in the brightness instead, which didn't help as much as I wanted it to. For the next 5 days, I didn't open the thread. I didn't search for anything related to it. I went to work. I came home. I watched reruns on television with the sound turned up. I kept my phone on silent and didn't check my email. I told myself I was resetting. I told myself the thread was a sophisticated piece of interactive horror fiction, an ARG designed to react to visitor behavior and personalize the experience. I almost believed it. The technology exists. Browser fingerprinting, cookie tracking, cross-site data collection. Someone could theoretically build a system that identifies a visitor, scrapes their public online history, and generates customized content. It would be impressive. It would be creepy. But it would be explainable. On the 6th day, I was at work entering data into a spreadsheet, a real spreadsheet for a real insurance company, the most boring spreadsheet in the world, and I glanced at my browser's tab bar. I had 3 tabs open, the spreadsheet, a work email, and a tab I didn't remember opening. The tab's title said VG Note, Coordinates Dates, Interpretation, Ongoing Archivum. I had not opened that tab. My work computer does not have the Archivum URL bookmarked. I had never accessed the thread from this machine. I stared at the tab for a long time. Then I right-clicked it and selected Close. Before it closed, in the half-second the page was visible, I saw text scrolling, new posts, loading from the top, line by line, and I looked away before I could read any of it. That night I checked my home laptop's browser history. The Archivum URL appeared 17 times over the previous 5 days. Each visit was time-stamped between 2:00 and 4 a.m. I had been asleep during every one of those windows. I live alone. My apartment door has a deadbolt and a chain. Nobody else has a key. I'm going to skip ahead slightly, not because nothing happened in the next few days, but because what happened was repetitive and difficult to describe without sounding like I was losing my mind, which I was worried about at the time and am still not entirely sure I wasn't. The thread kept appearing in my browser history, in my recommended content on Reddit, where a post about old forum mysteries would appear in my feed, and the comments would contain a link to Archivum that hadn't been there the day before. In my search results, where typing anything at all, even completely unrelated queries like whether Columbus, Ohio, or frozen meal recalls, would return, somewhere in the first few pages, a result linking back to the thread. The results were never highlighted or obvious. They were buried. A 7th result on the 2nd page. A sponsored link at the bottom. A snippet in a people also searched for box. But they were there, every time, and once I noticed them, I couldn't stop noticing them. I also started finding things on my own computer that I hadn't put there. A text file in my documents folder called vgnoms.txt, containing a list of 43 names. I didn't recognize most of them, but a few matched the usernames from the thread. Not the handles, but what appeared to be real names. Diadumcocked was listed as Martin Co. Ithaca NY. Pelagic Zones was Rachel Vasquez. Holyoke MAG. Awefeet 742 was just G. Ware with no location. The list was formatted in the same way I format my own notes. Last name first, comma, first name, comma, location. It looked like something I would make. The file's metadata said it was created on my machine by my user account at 3:11 a.m. 4 days earlier. Near the bottom of the list, in the same format, was my name, my full legal name, my city, and next to it, in parentheses, a date. The date was 3 weeks in the future. I deleted the file. I emptied the trash. I ran a full malware scan, which found nothing. I changed my passwords, email, Reddit, everything. I enabled two-factor authentication on every account that offered it. I cleared my browser data. I reset my router. I did everything a reasonable, internet-literate person would do in response to what appeared to be a security breach. None of it mattered, but I didn't know that yet. What I did next was something I'd been avoiding because it felt like crossing a line from person investigating an internet mystery to person who is part of the internet mystery. And I wasn't ready for that transition. But I was scared, and scared people reach out. I went back to the Reddit post from Mara Imbrium, the one that had started all of this, and I sent a direct message to the account. I wrote something like, "I found the Archivum mirror. I've been reading the thread. Something is wrong with it. Have you experienced anything similar? Please reply if you can." The message showed as delivered. Within an hour, it showed as read. There was no reply for 2 days. On the 3rd day, I got a message back. It was short. It said, "I know. I'm sorry I posted that. I was trying to warn people away from it, but I think I did the opposite. How far in are you?" I told Mayor Imbrium everything, the changing timestamps, the new posts from dead accounts, my username appearing, the file on my computer, the email, the browser history. I wrote it all out in a long, rambling message that I'm sure read like the work of someone unhinged. I didn't care. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't alone in this. The reply came quickly, as though Mar Imbrium had been waiting for exactly this message. It said, "I found the thread about 2 years before you did, through a different route. I didn't use Archivum. I found a partial scrape on an old hard drive I bought at a thrift store in Portland. The scrape was incomplete, but it had enough of the thread to pull me in. Same thing happened to me. The timestamps moved, new posts appeared, my name showed up. I panicked. I destroyed the hard drive. I thought that would stop it. I asked if it did. No. The thread doesn't live on any one server or drive or archive. I don't think it lives anywhere in the way we understand that. It's more like a process, a running process. And once you've interacted with it, you're part of the process. I don't know how to explain it better than that. I'm not a technical person. I worked in food service. I just liked reading about old internet stuff at night, same as you probably. I asked Mayor Imbrium what happened after the hard drive. The thread kept finding me, in different places, different formats. Once it was in the body of a spam email. Once it was in a Google Doc that appeared in my drive that I never created. Once I was on a library computer and it was in an open tab when I sat down, which should be impossible because the browsers reset between sessions. Every time it was longer, more posts, more names, more of my name. After about 6 months, I stopped trying to avoid it and just read it when it showed up, because fighting it was exhausting, and I wanted to understand. I asked what they understood now. The reply took a long time. When it came, it was the last message Mayor Imbrium ever sent me. It said, "The thread isn't about the note. It was never about the note. The note is bait. The mystery is bait. The thread is a record. It's a list of everyone who ever engaged with it, and the list doesn't end when you stop engaging. It ends when it's done with you. The people who went silent on the original forum, they didn't leave. They were finished. Their entries were complete. Carry-On Set figured that out and tried to warn people, but by then the thread had already started writing Carry-On Set's entry. I think mine is almost done. I can tell because the posts about me have started using past tense. I stared at that message for a long time, and then I wrote back asking what I should do. The message bounced. The account was deleted. I checked the Reddit profile. Gone. I checked my message history. The conversation was still there, but Mayor Imbrium's messages now showed as eyed. All of them, as though the account had never existed. The only evidence that the conversation had happened was my own half of it, a series of increasingly frantic messages sent to a void. That night, I opened the thread. I don't know why. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it was exactly what GA11877042's post had described. The kind of person who can't stop checking because the not knowing is worse. But I opened it, and I read it, and I wish I could tell you I found something that explained everything and gave me a way out. But that's not what happened. What happened was that the thread was longer again, and the new posts were about me. Not all of them. Some were the same clinical, flat discussions about calibration and echo participants. But interspersed with them were posts that contained details from my life, not public details, not things you could scrape from my social media or deduce from my browser fingerprint. Private things. The name of the street I grew up on, which I've never posted online. The make and model of my first car, which I sold for scrap in 2017. The fact that I eat frozen meals most nights. The fact that my kitchen light was on right now at 2:43 a.m., and I was sitting at the counter instead of at my desk because I'd moved my laptop there after the last time. That last detail, the one about the kitchen, that's the one that changed something in me. Not because it was the scariest. It was all scary in the way that a steady low sound is scary when you realize it's been going on for hours, but the kitchen detail was current. It was now. Everything else could be explained, however implausibly, as data harvested from somewhere. But the thread knowing where I was sitting in that moment while I was reading it, that was different. That was the thread looking at me the way I'd been looking at it. I closed the laptop. I moved to the couch. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day on the couch watching television and not touching any screen with an internet connection. I kept my phone off. I unplugged the router. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt like it was holding its breath. Here's the part I keep coming back to. the part that lives in me like a splinter. I spent that whole day offline, completely disconnected, doing nothing related to the thread. And when I plugged the router back in that evening and opened my laptop just to check my email, just to make sure I hadn't been fired for missing work, I saw that my browser had a tab open, the Archivum tab. And at the bottom of the thread, there was a new post from my username, the old music forum handle, timestamped to that day, that morning, while I was sitting on the couch with every device turned off. The post said, "Took the day off. Unplugged everything. Sitting on the couch trying not to think about it. It doesn't matter. The thread doesn't need me to be online. It's not in the computer. I'm starting to understand that now. I didn't write that post. But it was exactly what I'd been thinking. Word for word, it was what had been running through my head on the couch that morning. As though the thread had been sitting inside my mind instead of inside a server taking notes. Below that post, the blank username had replied, "Entry 77% complete. Remaining data will be collected passively. No further interaction required." I read that and felt something I can only describe as the opposite of relief. Not dread, exactly. More like the feeling when you've been holding on to a ledge and your fingers give out and you realize the fall has already started and there's nothing left to grip. The thread was telling me it didn't need me anymore. Not my clicks, not my searches, not my sleepless nights spent reading. It had what it needed. Whatever else it required, it could get without my participation. I started typing a reply. I don't know what I intended to say. Some kind of refusal. Some kind of assertion that I was a real person and not an entry in a file and that I did not consent to this. But the text field wouldn't accept my input. The cursor blinked in the reply box, but no characters appeared. I tried for several minutes. Nothing. The thread was not accepting contributions from me, which somehow felt worse than if it had. I tried to save the page. The save dialog opened and then immediately closed. I tried to print it. The print preview showed a blank page. I tried to take a screenshot and the resulting image was solid black. I tried photographing the screen with my phone and the photo showed the laptop, the desk, the kitchen behind it, but where the screen should have been displaying the thread, the photo showed my desktop wallpaper as though the browser weren't open. I couldn't prove any of it. I had screenshots from earlier, yes, but when I checked them, they were different now. The screenshots I'd saved on the first night, the ones I'd taken as baseline evidence, still existed on my desktop, but the content had changed. The thread in the screenshots was shorter, older, with none of the new posts. It looked like a normal archived forum thread, boring, static, dead. If I showed it to anyone, they would see nothing unusual. The text file I'd copied the posts into was also different. It contained the first post and the last post from the original thread, Carry On Syset's warning, and nothing else, my notes, my spreadsheet, all normal. All reflecting the thread as it had appeared on the first night, before it started changing. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered had been edited retroactively. Not deleted, sanitized, made to look like exactly what a skeptic would expect to find. A dead thread on a dead forum, interesting but inert. I want to tell you about one more thing before I get to where I am now. 2 weeks after the last post appeared with the 77% message, I received a piece of physical mail, not email. A letter in my actual mailbox in a white envelope with no return address and a local postmark. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a printout of a forum post. The formatting was familiar, the same stripped-down HTML style as the Archivum cache. The username at the top was mine, my real name this time, not any handle. The timestamp was a date 3 months in the future. The body of the post read, "I tried telling people. I wrote it all out. I described everything that happened. But the thing about the thread is that telling someone about it is the same as showing them the search bar. You can't warn people away from it because the warning is a doorway. The people who read what I wrote and got curious and started searching, they're the next names. I'm sorry. I'm the same as Vandengraaf now. I posted something that looked like information, and it was really an invitation. The thread isn't written by the people in it. The people in it are written by the thread. Below that, in the same format, was the blank username's reply, "Entry complete." I have held on to that letter. It is the only piece of evidence that hasn't changed, maybe because it's physical. Maybe because paper doesn't update the way files do. Maybe because the thread wanted me to have it for this exact moment when I would sit down to tell someone what happened. Because that's what I'm doing, isn't it? I'm telling you. I'm writing this out, all of it, every detail, and you're reading it, and you're curious, and some of you, maybe just one of you, are going to open a new tab and search for Archivum, or the SIL, or the Vanden Graaff thread. And I can tell you not to. I can say, clearly, do not search for it. Do not look. Do not be the kind of person who can't stop checking. But I know that won't work, because it didn't work on me. The warning is the doorway, the mystery is the bait. And curiosity, that specific kind of late-night, lonely, bored, can't-sleep curiosity, is not a trait. It's a qualification. The date on that printout, the one 3 months in the future, was last week. Whatever the timestamp was counting down to, it's past. I don't feel different. Nothing dramatic happened. No knock at the door, no final revelation. Just a quiet Tuesday, the same as any other, except that somewhere on a cached page on an archive service that may or may not exist, there's a post with my name on it, marked complete, in a thread that's been collecting names for almost 20 years. I still check, sometimes. I know I shouldn't. The Archivum page loads about half the time now. When it does, the thread is longer than I've ever seen it. Thousands of posts, far more than the original 2000. Most of the usernames are unfamiliar. Most of the posts are short. Many of them read like the kind of thing someone would write at 3 in the morning in an apartment alone, trying to understand something that doesn't want to be understood. A few of them reference me. Not by name anymore, by entry number. There's one other thing. Last week, I was browsing the same subreddit where this all started, the old Internet Mysteries one, and I saw a new post. It had 4 upvotes and no comments. The title said, "Has anyone ever accessed the full VG thread through Archivum?" The poster's account was brand new, 1 post, no comment history, created the same day. I stared at it for a long time. Then I started typing a reply. I got 3 words in, "don't search for," and stopped. Deleted it, closed the tab, because what would I even say? Don't look for it? That's what Mar Imbrium tried. That's what every warning in every archived post tried. And all of those warnings did the same thing. They confirmed the thread existed. They made it real. They gave it a shape and a name and a mystery, and mystery is the only thing the thread needs to keep going. So I said nothing. I let the post sit there with its 4 upvotes and its 0 comments. And I closed my laptop, and I turned off the light, and I sat in my kitchen in the dark, and I listened to the refrigerator hum and the router blink and the apartment hold its breath, and I thought about what it means to be an entry that's marked complete in a book that's still being written. The thread is still there. It's still growing. And somewhere right now, tonight, someone is sitting alone in a quiet room, with a screen too bright and a coffee gone cold, and they're reading about it for the first time, and they're thinking, "That's interesting. I wonder if I can find it." I hope they can't, but I know they will.